On This Week in Sales, we're going to be taking a look at Flockjay pivoting from sales training, Pipeliner introducing experts into its CRM, the convergence of sales tech, and much, much more. My name is Will Barrett. I'm the founder of Salesman.org, and joining me, co-host of this show via Skype, Victor, sales legend, Antonio. Victor, how's it going, mate?
Man, it is going kind of good. As I told you, I'm getting over COVID 2.0 right now. A little tight in the chest still, but I'm gonna make it. Well, I'm gonna make it, man. So, but other than that, all is good, man.
Do you know what? We didn't do one episode 1 week, or I did a solo episode, and at the beginning of the episode, I made like a flippant joke, right? And it was a poignant moment for me.
At my expense.
Kind of. I was like, at the beginning of the episode, I think there'd been a mix-up. You weren't available, whatever it was. And at the beginning of the episode, I was like, well, it's just me this week. Hopefully Victor isn't dead, because that would be really awkward on next week's episode when the news comes out. Well, with that, let's jump into some sales news. Now, this is an article from TechCrunch.com. You can find all these articles and everything we're talking about in the show notes of this episode over at thisweekinsales.com. Flockjay cuts at least...
Wait. What is it with these companies and these names, Will? Flockjay. Is that a combination of two words? I don't know. Flockjays. Where do they come up with these names, Will? I don't mean to interrupt the flow here, but I'm like, Flockjay?
I think this is not a good example. But if you were named and had the domain bluefish.com, that's pretty memorable, right?
Right.
That could be an IT company, a consulting company, or a technology company. If you were named a Bad Camera and you did photography, something like that, that's two random words put together. And I think that sounds pretty cool. I haven't said that off the top of my head. But Flockjay makes no sense to me. I've no idea what that means.
It does. Yeah. Whoever did that at Flockjay, good luck with that name.
And the article is entitled "Flockjay cuts at least half its workforce as it pivots away from bootcamps into B2B SaaS." Now, before I jump into what's in this article, Victor, have you heard of Flockjay before? I'm assuming not.
No, I've not heard of Flockjay, and that's why they lost half their workforce, probably because of the bad name.
Okay, well, they would probably PR it in a different direction. They've said that they're pivoting the how we describe a failing company, I guess. Without being as harsh, maybe the pivot can be successful. But Flockjay's previous core offering was a 10-week sales training bootcamp that helped place graduates into sales jobs across tech companies. Now, they claim, and I'm sure this is true if they're claiming it, graduates of the course, otherwise known as Flockjay Tech Fellows, make an average of $75,000 upon graduation, when I assume to get placed in a role. Now, I'm less interested about the bootcamp. I'm less interested about the company. I just thought this was an interesting topic in its own right for a couple of reasons. So this is from the article on TechCrunch. While it is true that learners shifted online, there are still questions about what purpose a non-accredited training program such as Flockjay serve, one investor said. With so many options in the market, users have optionality on... Is that a word? Optionality on what service they frequent, and the service may indeed not do as well as a flashy university partnership. So that's point one, and we'll come to that in a second. Point 2, Flockjay struggles to also put a spotlight on the highly scrutinized income share agreements, ISAs. This financial instrument essentially allows students to avoid paying upfront fees to attend a bootcamp and then ultimately pay back these fees through a percentage of their future income. Now, this makes me feel weird inside, Victor, right? These two things.
Does.
So
it does.
I have some questions for you.
Okay.
1, Victor Antonio, sales legend, who was getting my haircut in 1988 when I was 2 years old. We discovered pre-click and record here, right? That's how long you've been in this space, this industry, crushing it, killing it, man. Do you need to pay for a boot camp to break into technology sales?
Today, no. You don't need one. Would I pay for one? I think if it was highly structured and highly organized, yes. And if it had some credibility behind it, maybe that's what they're trying to build. But with a name like Flockjay, I go back to that. That's not going to happen. Why do you call your graduates Flockjay Tech Fellows? Why not Flockies or something cool like that? Give me an identity. But all kidding aside, I mean, I guess I would pay for it but this is why I'm hesitating. Well, because, you know, in today's market, what we're seeing here in the US is more universities are now offering sales programs. So I would rather go to a university, like we have one here called Kennesaw State, which now has a specific sales department, and get a degree from there that has more validity when you take it out to the market.
So this is my next question. Do university-led trainings have more kudos than private online training? So a wider question here than Flockjay. Maybe it's Google does their own sales training. Does a university have more kudos because it's a university, rightly or wrongly, than a Google-led sales training?
See, that's a brand, right? If it's a Google sales training program, that's going to have more. I don't mean to just piss on Flockjay, but Google versus Flockjay, there's no comparison. I'd rather get a sales training program over at Google. But I still think a lot of companies are, they're looking for that 4-year degree. And I recently read, so I think I might have mentioned, a couple of weeks ago when we last talked, that people who have degrees earn more money. More people are above the poverty line who have degrees than those who don't. And so I still think companies look for degrees. And I think, again, if you can get one with a sales degree, but look at and I don't want to get ahead of it, but, I would look at the cost of what that would cost versus what it would cost to actually get a degree. So that's something else I'd have to weigh.
Sure. So we'll come on to that in a second. I'm interested about this university point. Now, practically, if I'm a small business, I'm hiring my first, second, third sales hire. Do I want to hire the salesperson who's done 4 years at university? Let's say it's a great university. It's a well-known sales degree, if there are any, right? The most prestigious university for sales training. Or do I want to hire someone out of my industry or a similar industry who has a track record of 4 years of success?
Well, I'll take the success person all day over a degree.
Would you take someone who has a year of success over green but with a degree?
Probably. I mean, I would interview them both, but I would give the edge to the person who's making it happen already. In other words, I would hire for, if they're walking through the door and they have here are my credentials and they got the right mindset, you're hired. I got a person who comes out of college, has no experience, has the right mindset, but it hasn't been tested yet. Because we know in sales, that's where the test happens, right? When you meet the customer, everything looks good on the books. And that would be interesting to find out, how many people actually get a degree can actually make a full transition into sales, because theory is one thing, practical is another. So,
and to be fair to this, sorry.
What would you do? Would you hire somebody if you had that option?
Oh, I don't care about university. Universities are definitely, we talked about this before, definitely going to die off within the next 5-10 years. They're anything other than life-changing careers, in that an engineer needs to go to university so they don't build a bridge that kills a load of people. They need to be accredited, right? A doctor needs to be accredited. Maybe a plumber, whoever, needs to be somewhat accredited as well. It doesn't have to be university. It could be done more practically, whatever it is. And hopefully, the problem with sales is there's no benchmark, because hitting quota in one company is not the same as hitting quota in another. Passing a test on sales knowledge is not useful to implementing that knowledge in the outside world, because so much of it, you touched about it there, Victor, is mindset, right? It's the ability to face the rejection and carry on. And it's difficult to train for that, other than just getting people on the phone whack you over the head for 6 months, and then you just eventually get over it. Now, to the credit of universities, I've had a few people on the Salesman podcast to discuss this topic, because it's an interesting topic to me, the academia versus just being practical and just getting your head down and knuckling down. And the university courses do seem to have placements. There does seem to be a practical element of this. There's lots of role playing. It isn't just learning from books, as one might assume as a traditional degree. So they would probably defend their case from that perspective.
Sure. I've seen some courses where they have to actually build a product and sell it and report their revenue. And you can't sell to your family type of thing. I think that's pretty interesting, right? And I love that. So yeah, I think it's an interesting concept. I feel bad for these guys, but I agree with you, Will. The university system, the way it is today, has to change. And not all these degrees should be funded. I think the government should stop funding these. I don't know. I want to do a degree on studying the life of a lobster or whatever it may be, some ridiculous topic like that, where, again, if it's not value generating, like, as you say, engineers, doctors, so forth and so on, yeah, okay, we'll do that. But it's interesting because I think universities are kind of pricing themselves out of the market because they're too expensive.
For sure. At some point, there's going to be a cultural shift where kids go, oh, university is not cool. It's just a waste of money. I'd rather take that 20, 50, 100 grand, 300 grand if you're a doctor in the US, whatever it is, and invest it into something else. Unfortunately, if you want to be a doctor in the US, I guess it's tough shit. You've got to suck it up. So this leads me on to the pricing element of this. Now, when I looked at the numbers, it was less disturbing than what I thought from the outset of reading this article. And I don't want to just pile on this one organization here, but they price things up as for the 10-week sales training bootcamp, which I'm assuming they really help you place at the end of it into a job as opposed to just leaving you. So there's a recruitment element of it here, which is factored into the pricing, right? You're investing into your career as opposed to just paying someone to give you an online training workshop and then you either sink or swim. It's $6,000 up front, and then they have what they call the deferred tuition agreement option, which is $420 a month for 18 months. And you only pay if you earn more than 40 grand or more. And it comes to a total of $13,650. Is it me, or is that a lot for an individual who is probably brand new to sales, has probably just come out of a degree, or they're looking at a career change? Is that a lot for 10 weeks of training and then some instructions to companies?
No, I'm gonna flock to Flockjay's defense. How's that?
That was terrible. That's what that was. That was rubbish.
Yeah, flock to Flockjay's defense on this one. I think the upfront tuition of $6,000 for a 10-week program. Again, assuming that it's just high quality, right? They're hitting all the structures, the curriculum. That's a great deal, I think. Even at $13,000, that's a great deal. They're saying if you don't get a job that earns at least $40,000, you get your money back. I think that's kind of a easy layup. You can probably do that without a degree, without going to Flockjay. You can probably find a $40,000 job. But I get what they're doing. I think that's a good deal. I actually like their value proposition. I think their price point is pretty damn good. I like the way they split that up. I mean, it's a great idea. So I'll defend them on that. I like the price point, assuming they have a great curriculum.
Fair enough. I like the price point, assuming they place you in a job. If you don't get placed in a job, and I've not got the numbers on that, which is obviously the most important part of all of this, I guess, then it sucks. You should avoid it, and you should read a book and go and sell something for someone in a local business and get some miles under your boots. That's what I'd recommend. But with that, Victor, tell us about. Go on.
Well, before we get to the next one, because I want to highlight something here. And I think we often forget this. And you're absolutely right in everything you're saying. Well, just go get a book. Why not do it yourself? The whole thing. But there's a lot of people, and they happen to be salespeople types that have ADHD bad. And they need a structured curriculum. You know what I mean? And that's why I see the value of Flockjay, that it's a structured curriculum and it's not going to take you 4 years. So for a salesperson who has ADHD and just wants to get it done quickly, this is a perfect fit, assuming they have the right value proposition. So I'm with you. If you can do it on your own, you got great courses like yours, like mine. Why pay for it? Because in many cases we give it away for free. But if you want the good stuff, even if ours is not that expensive. But that said, I think some people need structure. So I'll leave it at that. Would you agree with that?
I would agree in premise. I would certainly agree if this includes, and I don't know if it does, and this is something I can't offer, right? I'm not hiring 27 people to work in an office to facilitate this. But over at salesman.org, our Salesman Simple Academy, we don't offer phone coaching. Now, if this does include that of, hey, here's the training module, we'll do some of it live, some of it's pre-recorded, here's questions, here's your homework, here's your jobs, and or Barry, one of the internal sales consultants, is going to ring you tomorrow to make sure you've done it and to get feedback and to push you forward, then yeah, of course it makes sense. If that isn't the case, and if it isn't as hands-on as that, because this obviously isn't classroom-based, then who knows?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Whatever the value proposition is. Anyway, on to Pipeliner CRM, which now announces XFind, the first database of experts and global consultants to be included in a CRM platform. I thought you might find this interesting. I found this over at PR Newswire. Pipeliner CRM, the leading sales enablement tool. Why is everybody the leading? Does anybody lag? If everybody's leading, aren't they all tied, theoretically speaking? Anyway, the leading sales enablement tool in CRM software today announced the release of XFind, a database of experts and global consultants in their platform. So in other words, you can contract experts from across a range of disciplines like sales, marketing, leadership, keynote speaking, motivation, so forth and so on. I quote, Pipeliner has developed a detailed contact database made up of over 1,400 experts. And if we're not in there, well, it's probably not worth anything. From more than 27 countries worldwide, most of which have showcased their expertise in our flagship publication, Sales Pop. We're screwed. I've never been in Sales Pop, so we're not in there. Says Nicholas Kimla, the CEO and founder of Pipeliner CRM. What do you think of this so far?
Just bullshit.
I knew you would. I knew you would.
Is that right? So Sales Pop is a blog, right? You could go and write for it. I'm sure they'd accept you because you're going to give them some free content. It's probably going to be good content. I've had back and forths with this organization before on different. I think they've actually sponsored the podcast like way back to be kind of open and fair. And I would never write for just a random generic blog that's tied with a CRM that is just full of just random people posting to it. And if it's just a list of people who write for the blog, then it's not this. It only has value, this idea, if it is the world's leading experts in micro niches of, hey, I need an expert to come in and teach our CEO how to do a motivational talk on stage for X amount of time, and Victor Antonio is the expert that I want to speak to. Unless it's as specific and as niche as that, which it clearly isn't, because it's just a list of people that write on the blog, then it has essentially zero value because it cannot outperform, Victor, a Google search.
Correct.
It cannot do it. The data, the numbers, the metrics cannot outperform everything that Google has on the subject. If you want an expert, just Google the topic and dash expert, and that's the way to go about this.
You know, it's funny because I knew you would say this about this, and I'm with you 100%. I'm with you 100%. I just thought I'd include it in there because it was an interesting concept of how to create more value for your end clients.
Is it though? Is it adding any value to anybody?
Well, let me just finish off. What if, assuming they were it took an agnostic approach, not just people who work for the blog, but they really looked for leaders in these industries, and there was some type of, I guess, certification or qualification process that they went through, and then put those people into the database. Then I can see that as being of some value. Look, we've talked to these people, we've interviewed them, we know the content. Here's what we recommend. I think that's a pretty good idea, but you'd have to go through the rigors of qualifying these folks.
What you're describing there is what HubSpot do, right? So HubSpot don't implement I think I'm right in this. But HubSpot don't have implementation specialists, and I'm sorry if I'm speaking out of turn, for their product for like small businesses in this industry, in this location. What they do is they work with small, big, medium-sized consultants that do the implementation on their behalf. They're accredited by HubSpot. They have to go through a bunch of training. They have to get the boxes ticked and this signed and knowledge checked. Then HubSpot will use them. So that's what we're describing here, isn't it? Because a small business owner, medium-sized business owner, you want to go via the, obviously HubSpot and Pipeliner CRMs. It's along with your ERP software. It's the core like fundamentals of your business, right? The software is built on top of it. And so if you can go to that supplier that you're already massively relying on, so there's already a ton of trust there built, hopefully back and forth between the CRM and the sales marketing team, the operations team, the revenue team, and you can ask them for their opinion and they can accredit people, then that makes total sense. But unless I'm missing something here.
No. I think you're dead on. I think you're dead on. It's almost like Microsoft when they have Microsoft business partners, people who've gone through the qualification process and actually used the product and can provide real, useful information for the actual user. But again, think about that Microsoft business partner idea. What if they could actually have that within the CRM, as you're already pointing out that HubSpot does? That's exactly where I see the real value. I didn't know HubSpot did that. Big shout out to HubSpot.
Yep, and lots of technology companies just in general do that. So rather than building a staff of 1,000 people, why not give I guess these agencies get a commission on each implementation of the software. Well, in fact, I know they do because I was doing a customer call with someone in the Sell Made Simple Academy the other day who does something very similar for Oracle. So I know that happens. But yeah, not sold on this, not interested. Sounds like just a bullshit press release.
I'm just not that hard on it. I mean, I'm just a little more soft about it.
Someone's got to bring the fire, Victor. If it's not you, it's me. I'm sure one of these, I'm going to be like, Victor's getting a bit irate about this, and it's not that big of a deal at all. We've got to make it entertaining, mate.
There you go, man. All right.
Okay, well, let's move on to sales enablement. Leader, Big Tin Can, another terrible name, acquires Brainshark. A pretty awesome name. I like the name.
I love Brainshark. This one, by the way, I actually had this one in my notes also, so I saw you put it up there first. But that's a great name, Brainshark. So anyway, I'll let you read the announcement here.
So Brainshark, in fact, I'm just about to criticize you then of changing the doc and adjusting things, but I can't read my own writing. I apologize, Victor. Big Tin Can, a global leader in sales enablement automation, has announced it's entered into a binding agreement, which tells me that this isn't 100% done if they can't just say acquired. That's a bit of a weird way to say acquired, right?
No, the binding means they have to go look at the numbers. Make sure you said what you said you're earning. And
how would you announce it if it's not done?
I could be wrong. I mean,
is that not weird? That's a little bit weird.
Into a binding agreement.
To acquire 100% of Brainshark. The deal combines two of the leading providers of sales readiness solutions for training, coaching, and onboarding, yada, 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 yada. Now, this was interesting because if you look at Big Tin Can, and I pulled some of the marketing material and tried to dissect it down to what they actually do, which is difficult. They do content automation and recommendations throughout the entire life cycle. So they give salespeople the right content at the right time automatically to save a marketing person do it. They've acquired Brainshark, which, again, dissected from their marketing material, creates internal training for salespeople and helps them track their progress through it. So we're getting content for the buyers. And then with the acquisition of Brainshark, we're now giving salespeople the content that they need to be able to sell to the buyers. So you're getting this 360 content, what would you call it? 360 content solution. There you go. There's some marketing to add to the nonsense. And I think that's smart. I mean, that's really intelligent.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a problem with this. I don't know if it's 360, more like a 180 maybe. Do you know what I mean as far as degree of visibility? Because I don't know what their technology does. We don't talk about the sales engagement platforms or the enablement platforms at the back. So that's why I wouldn't give them the full 360. But I think it's interesting how a company like, and again, I don't know enough about Big Tin Can, but I do know this much. When I hear content automation, that bothers me. Because, on one hand, what we say is we need to hyper-personalize our presentation pitches to our clients, right? And then there's this content automation. I think what they're saying is that it's just a giant library, index library. Until the AI starts creating these presentations, like I can talk, I was like, okay, today I'm going to talk to Will about A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, build it. And then if it could just spit out the ultimate presentation, then I'll believe it works. But every time I see content automation, to me, it's just marketing has a giant repository of new, presentations, PDFs, case studies that they put there. And this is just a way of tying those in. Hey, keywords you mentioned here tie into this content, content piece here. Check it out. But you still have to go through them.
I think the problem that they're trying to solve, and we can lean on Gong for some of this perhaps as a potential solution and tie into all of this. And this maybe give you the 360 that you're craving for, Victor, of marketing create all this content and salespeople just don't use it. So if you could tie this into, for example, a Gong, and you have, hey, we just had this phone call, and Gong goes, you talked about this. We have marketing collateral on this. You should send this person this. When you send this person after this conversation has happened, statistically, the buyer will open it and read it for 27 minutes. And then we've A/B tested this against other content. Then salespeople will proactively do it, which kind of is the issue that I think we're trying to solve with these acquisitions, these tools, this software, of how do we get salespeople to actually do what we know probably works, which is getting the right content in the right hands at the right time.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. I think in this case, Big Tin Can, the BTC. Oh, why is their acronym BTH then? I don't know. So Big Tin Can, I think they just need to check off that box of sales training as something their customers are probably asking for. Hey, by the way, do you have any sales training? And Brainshark, I think, is a great acquisition. So good for Brainshark. Anyway,
before that, Victor, I've got one thing to stick in here. I thought I'd put it in the doc, but it's not there. You mentioned this last week when we didn't record the show. You feel under the weather, but I think it's worth mentioning now. Last week, it was announced that Seismic bought Lessonly. Almost exactly the same acquisition of Seismic creates tools that give salespeople software. Seismic has software that helps give salespeople the right content at the right time during the sales process. And Lessonly is internal training, so they don't give you how to do X, Y, Z, but they give you the platform to do internal training with your sales team as well. So it's almost a mirror of the acquisition we talked about earlier, and this happened last week as well.
Good point. And I wonder, you triggered me to think about this, is that with Lessonly or Brainshark, are they really buying the content or are they really buying the platform?
The platform. There is no content.
Yeah,
they're just flat learning management systems, essentially, where there might be guidelines of how to create the content for your organization, but there'll be like a learning designer in an organization that will come and add their training within it. Or they'll buy your training and license it and put it in.
Yeah. I thought Brainshark had, so I stand corrected. I thought Brainshark had some training in there already also with their platform.
I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
Yeah. Anyway, but you're right. That's a great parallel. Good callback there. Good callback on last week's. Good man. Anyway, this next article, I threw this one in there again just to irritate you. Sometimes I just want to throw these in here just to irritate you. The convergence, because I know you hate this word when I talk about AI and stuff like that. The convergence of sales enablement, engagement, and readiness by Stephen Diodio, Forbes magazine. He writes, now individually, AI solutions are automating and enabling critical aspects of the commercial model, from resource allocation to sales training to account management, pricing, proposal writing, blah, blah, blah. Collectively, they are fast becoming the core of an ROS, a revenue operating system. And I quote, because this, I wish I had some dramatic music. If we can have some dramatic music right now, that'd be great. We're living through an interesting phase right now where we have a lot of disparate, what a good word, systems in the commercial technology ecosystem, says Greg Munster, the VP of Global Sales Operations at Canonical. What do you think of this whole holistic view? AI is going to tie it all together. That's what this article is saying. We don't longer have a CRM. We have a system that's called a revenue operating system, a ROS.
I'm going to reread this quote. We're living through an interesting phase right now. Correct. True. Lots of stuff going on. Where we have a lot of disparate systems. Disparate systems in the commercial technology ecosystem.
Yes.
That is the least useful sentence that I've ever heard. There's no, you probably know more about language and how things should be structured. There is no payoff to that. There is no outcome. There is no insight. That was like saying, hey, I record with Victor each week. He has no hair. I can only assume that, Greg, you were cut off halfway through this sentence and the quote didn't go on to give the payoff and the explanation that you probably, hopefully, poetically put across here. So we'll blame Stephen at Forbes, the author, for this. But, Victor, what does it? Doesn't even mean anything.
What he did was just state the obvious. Do you know what I mean? It just stated the obvious. But again, I threw this in here because I knew you would react to it. But when I start seeing now, phrases like revenue operating system, is this the new language, right? That's the one reason I threw it in there. Is this new language we're seeing? But I wanted to also just kind of pause here with you because I'm starting to move over to your side of the table. I hate to say this. I really hate to say this, but it's like I'm starting to see a lot of the failings of AI integration. And how it all ties together. And I still find a lot of it has to be done manually, or some type of API has to be written for this stuff to be pulled together. So when he said, individually, AI solutions are automating and enabling critical aspects of the commercial model, I'm like, no, I don't think so. Not in all cases. So I don't know. I brought this in because this always gets back to our conversation about, are these things really coming together? And I think a lot of companies are struggling.
Let me ask you this, Victor. And we talked about it before we clicked record, I've just done a ton of customer consulting and then just formal customer interviews where I'm asking buyers of our training product what you like, what you don't like, what you need, what you're lacking, and then typically they turn into like a consulting conversation of, oh, I'll help you with this on the phone whilst we're here, right? You're a salesperson, B2B, complex sales, it's software, it's hardware, it's something that's easy to comprehend. What do you need from software, Victor? What problems does software need to solve for you to hit your quota this quarter?
For me, it would be specifically the software. It would be to tell me what deals, again, this part does work. What deals are likely to close based on the information we fed the CRM, okay? When I look at the upselling piece, I've already sold these. Can you please highlight to me when is a good time to approach these companies again to do some upselling and cross-selling, and then maybe suggest, based on the history, what I can sell them. So there's where I can see some practical applications of the system telling me what to do.
So I'll go in for more fundamental than that. I need people's email addresses. I need people's phone numbers.
Right.
I need a way to create a cadence that can be tested and can be put into place so I don't have to physically be there to send an email. I can write it ahead of time. So that's my prospecting, right? I need to be able to research buyers. This is all like, we don't need AI for any of this. This is all just if this, then that, if this, then that. Then going on to your piece there, which I'd push towards more account management, like the upsell, cross-sell, price increases, that side of things. Maybe a tool can tell me some of this stuff, but a tool is not going to be as good as me ringing up my buyers once a month, once a quarter, reporting back on the product usage, the value they've got out of working with us, and then just asking, hey, what's up? Is there any, what we're fishing for is trigger events, right? I'm not convinced that AI, and it's not really AI, clearly it's machine learning, that can solve these issues that a quick phone call, discipline, knowledge of what to do. So you need some kind of playbook to pass that down from people and to refine it within your team. I'm not convinced that all these tools really help with the fundamentals of sales that actually get deals done. Does that make sense?
Oh, I totally get it. I'm not going to argue for or against, because I can see, in some cases, what I'm seeing is that they're using these systems almost as, like a phone recorder. They're not really using the audio for conversational intelligence, right? Or they're using them for notifications, like ding, here's a trigger event. Okay. The salesperson goes, what do I do with that? You expect the machine learning to tell you, here's what you do with that. Here's some scripts, here's some follows. And I'm sure some systems do that. I'm going to go back to it. I'm a default. It's almost my cop out way. So I'm about to cop out right now. So just warning you, is that unless you're rigorous about getting the information in there, structuring how the playbooks, the voice of the customers, the messaging, unless you're disciplined about getting that stuff in there and then really working it to make sure that the right notifications and the right programming is in place, it's not going to work. And nothing, if it's not going to work, then nothing beats just picking up the phone. By the way, which you should do anyway, right? You know what I mean? That should be like a natural cadence, right? Call Will every 30 days just to check in, or if something in between happens, give him a call. So I'll never get away from that, because I'm definitely old school, as you keep pointing out, like very old school.
Not old school, just old.
Yeah. Just old. And so I still like calling. I actually had this conversation. I was being interviewed by VanillaSoft. And I was talking about, the whole cold calling is dead. I said, well, it depends. I said, if I'm selling $100 item, cold calling is not going to help me, right? Because that's a lot of calls just to make $100. Now, it's not worth it. But if I'm selling a large B2B enterprise type of platform, then it makes sense to kind of once in a while pick up the phone. And so I don't know if I'm answering the question in terms of, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Can the AI work for you? All I know is that based on what I'm seeing, a lot of companies simply don't know how to use the technology, but they like to check off the box that they have it. And the salespeople seem to think, okay, I'm doing all this work. I'm loading the CRM up. I'm not getting anything back. And so when people start like you are a non-believer. And the only way you will become, if I can use an example, the only way you will become a believer is that if somebody says, all right, Will, I'm going to show you how, if we put this data in, set this up this way, it's going to spit out what you need to do next. If I can show you that, would you believe? You probably go, all right, well, yeah, show it to me. Let me see how this thing works. But right now, I think it's hard to do with a lot of companies.
I'm struggling to come up with an analogy or a metaphor, but the problem is your sales team don't know how to sell. They suck. and then you're trying to put like there was a better analogy of this, but you're trying to put like a plaster over the problem rather than solve the underlying, this is getting gross, underlying infection, which is that the salespeople they don't know what to do. If you teach people, and it's like, what's the saying? It's like hard things, easy life, easy things, hard life. In the training's hard. It's difficult to get up every morning and prospect for 2 hours. It's easy to get up, piss about on LinkedIn, do this and that, message some people, set up a 12 email cadence and sit back and just watch it go out and get no responses. It's difficult to pick up that phone. It's difficult, but the more difficult things that you're willing to do, it's difficult to start building your personal brand, right? And suck it up for, you got to do 100 pieces of content, as you talk about, Victor. You got to do 100 pieces of content before anyone gives a shit, before anyone cares in the slightest. But once you've done that, you get inbound leads. You call someone, they go, oh, I was just watching your YouTube channel the other day. Or, hey, I just, if we take it a step below that, hey, I just watched the video that's linked in your email signature. It was awesome. It was really valuable. Those insights in that email were the reason that I booked a meeting with you. All this hard stuff makes your life easy in sales later on. And it seems like not all, but a lot of sales technology is trying to make sales easy when the hard stuff makes it easy. It's not just software. It's not just more tools. It's not just more stuff.
Said more succinctly, we lean on technology too much to do the selling for us. And therefore, we become inadequate when it comes to real selling face to face. That's why I would add that all up.
I agree. It's a nice to have. I'm not sure it's a necessity. You need data on contacting people. You need like a Discover org or a LinkedIn Sales Navigator. You need some way of effectively communicating with people. And the most effective way to do emails probably isn't via Gmail. It's probably Outreach or one of the other companies that does cadences and that side of things. If you're doing lots of cold calls, you need something like, I don't know, there's tons of dialing softwares out there. And then you need a way to track it all. And if your insights going in are sound, and eventually, or maybe even now, you get an occasional pop-up and it gives you a trigger event that you didn't realize was going on because you hadn't picked up the phone because you've been on all day or whatever. Perfect. But I'm not convinced we need much more than that to sell in the complex environment. Am I wrong? Am I miles away?
No, because I think what you're saying is that we've reached it's almost like the law of diminishing returns. You only need so much technology to sell. Beyond that, it's not really giving you the ROI you want. It's kind of what you're saying. If you get the basics down, you get the skill sets, you get some basic tools down. Beyond that, do you need much more? And that's where people are trying to make the case, for example, these AI systems, right? Is it really worth it, or is it just more money we're throwing down the tube and we're not really seeing the return on investment? And I say that the companies that know how to do it and can actually invest, put the money in and do it right, are the ones that are going to get the return.
For sure. Okay, let's move on to Culture Corner. And Victor, you get us started with this topic. Then I'll bounce off your perspectives.
It's funny because, so on the Culture Corner, we just thought we'd talk about what's going on in Afghanistan, because I've been glued to the computer screen for the last 2-3 days since I've been sick anyways. And I just think it's really fascinating that from a U.S.-centric perspective, I'm actually finding myself watching international news because I seem to get more accurate news from international choices. Like there's one called Sky News Australia. Well, we know what they think, but there's like WEON, DW. I watched some of the UK stuff. I know the folks over the UK are just not happy. I think they one of your MPs, Tom Longhart, something like that, gave one of the best short speeches I've ever heard. And I like British people because they can basically send you to hell in the nicest way without really saying anything. You're like, did he just basically diss me? But anyway, so I think it's sad what's going on. I think I keep getting asked the question, what do we think on this side of the pond? And we're just as confused as to why this is happening this way. Nobody's arguing that it should happen in the U.S. Everybody's going, couldn't we have done this just a little better? That's the big question we have here. Why did we fail at the execution of the pullout?
Well, if we go back to this idea of like first principles, right? You've got to look at why were primarily the US pushing to be in Afghanistan in the first place, right?
Correct.
Because if it was weird going in, it was probably weird coming out, right?
Sure.
But my perspective on this, Victor, and hopefully this be somewhat refreshing, and this might give you a kick in the ass as well, is it just doesn't affect me. I don't watch the news. I'm not glued to any screens. I'm not glued to something that's going on the other side of the world, as tragic as it seemingly is, and just having glances of article headlines as I'm trying to do my work and other stuff that's going on, as I'm trying to browse content that's relative to my life, right? The humanitarian element of this, obviously, it seems absolutely atrocious, and maybe there were better ways to go about and execute on it. But I can't spend my time focusing on it because it's not what I'm here to do. It's not. There are people who are dealing with the refugees. There are people who are dealing with the maybe the charitable elements that some of us can put towards the. I don't know if you can stabilize what is essentially an unstable country, because the Taliban, the Afghanis, don't consider themselves necessarily a country. They see themselves as tribes in a space. Maybe we're putting a Western perspective on some of this that doesn't necessarily need to be there. But yeah, that's my perspective on it, Victor. That is stuff that's happening the other side of the planet. I don't pay attention to it. Is it Dunbar's number? That's 150 people, right?
Say that again?
Is it Dunbar's number that's 150 people? Our brains are wired to deal with around about a tribe of 150 people.
Beyond the 150, you lose that sense of community, I think is what it is.
Well, you lose the ability to process it, because that number is just enough people on this side of 150 that gossip allows you to keep up with what's going on with this tribe member, this tribe member. All you've got to know in a tribe of 150 people is there's a friggin' another tribe coming over the hill, and we better get these axes out and start chopping some heads off. That's all you need to know. And that's what we're wired for as humans. And I find that if I really got into US politics with Donald Trump, if I really got into what's going on in Afghanistan, if I really got into the financial issues and potential economic collapse that's going on and has been going on for years in Greece, Brexit, the EU, I just go mental, mate.
So let me be clear. The only reason this is captured my attention, it's almost like a bookend to a long story. 9/11, 20 years ago, right? So that's an event. And this is like the bookend of that event. And I'm just watching this and just fascinated. Not trying to draw any judgment, but just fascinated at how we can screw something up so royally. Mm-hmm. And then to witness the inhumanity of man, you know what I mean, on what we're doing and what we're seeing. It's just like, wow, you have to kind of take a moment. And I don't know, I'm just fascinated by this, because I think this is a moment, especially in U.S. history, where we're going to look at this in the history books and go, yeah, we didn't get that one right at all. And I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned there. But I also come from the standpoint, I'm trying to understand, like, what led to this. Like, nobody seems to have a coherent story about, and that's even the most mind-blowing thing, that you realize how much they don't know, because they apparently can't articulate or don't want to share it. And I'm still dumbfounded. If you ask me, okay, so how did this come about again? I'll be like, all right, here are the pieces I have, even after watching it for 3 days, because nobody seems to understand anything. So I think that's just fascinating. But there's some leadership, lessons in this thing.
For sure. To tie it back to sales via a long tangent, part of the problem with long-term, like, military campaigns, however you want to describe it, right, is that you go through multiple, how do you describe it? Multiple people being in charge, whether it's presidents, whether that's senates, whether that's here in the UK, the houses of the Commons, whether it's prime ministers. And so everyone has different opinions. People pick up other people's, or groups will pick up other people's agendas. You've got to then make it fit your agenda, because you want to get voted in again and again, and it goes back and forth, and it's all weird. And it's tied into sales. This is probably one of the issues that we have with selling, of people join a company, do one thing, go to another company, do another, I'm not sure about this, you go back and forth, and sales leadership are doing the same, they're bouncing back and forth. Nobody seemingly has long-term views on their careers. Again, I'm pulling it away from Afghanistan for a second. I've not spoke to a salesperson. I can't remember the last salesperson I spoke to, if there's been any who said, oh yeah, 10 years from now, I want to be doing X, Y, Z. It's, well, this quarter, this month. Crap, next week I've got to hit my frigging target. Have you got any thoughts for me? Anything that I can like just scrape the bottom of the barrel and come up with something so that I'm not getting in trouble? Or the opposite of I'm way over target. Is there anything you can recommend that I can quickly upsell a potential customer or engage with them on that front? Is this something that, or let me ask you this, I'll just be blunt. How do you plan out your goals, Victor? What timeframes do you look at? And what do you think is an effective time frame to have to actually achieve something that's worth going after?
3 months is kind of my window. Do you know what I mean? But here's what I mean by this: that as I'm looking at, I know in the long run where I want to be. We talked about this before we got on the show. I said,
so, and how far ahead is that, right?
3 to 5 years is kind of what I'm looking at. That's the long term. And I said, all right, but I'm going to measure every 3 months because I need to kind of be reminded of what I'm doing to make sure that we're on that trajectory. I think, but I love your sales analogy with what's happening there. I would add another one is that, how sometimes you join a new organization, right? And you just continue the policies of the previous VP of sales without questioning, well, why are we still doing it that way? Right? That whole thing. And I think that's another lesson that's to be learned. Did anybody decide to go, why are we doing it this way? Can we question or rejigger? And again, I think, we got the 20-year anniversary coming up, and I guess somebody decided they wanted to be out before the 20-year mark, and that was going to be their claim to fame. And I think it just backfired a little bit.
Yeah, this is where when you take out the real world and you go into politics, it's all weird because nobody really has ownership of things long term. People are doing things to extend their own career to the detriment of other people. Whereas if you do that in an organization, you get sacked, right? You get kicked out because the organization has to win. This is why politics often leads to weird places and weird conversations, and why a lot of politicians, in my experience, are just weird. Because who the heck wants to be prime minister? Who the heck wants all that responsibility? You've got to be a nutter to want all that pressure, all that hate. Boris, I'm not all that familiar with British politics. I don't really care about it. He seems like a legend. I'd go for a pint with him in the pub. But he's been groomed from a very young age through very prestigious universities and family members and all that kind of stuff to be pushed into that role, as was David Cameron, who came before him. And for a mere mortal, a mere plebeian like me to even comprehend why they'd want to be in that role, this goes for almost all politicians. It's beyond me, and so maybe there's more to this than what a pleb like me.
Yeah,
can understand.
We probably don't understand. I'll end on this note: is that I'm blown away that we don't even know the real numbers, and we can't get consistent numbers of people who are there or who helped us the whole bit. I'm going, isn't that basic sales? Isn't that basic management? You got to know your numbers, right? And I'm like, well, we got these massive Black Hawk helicopters. We got these type of technology, that type of technology. Okay, so, but how many people do you have there? I don't know. It could be between 10,000 and 40,000. I don't know about you, but that's not an accurate guess, in my opinion.
No, it's
so anyway, that's another lesson, man. But again, I think it's a fascinating time, and I feel for the folks over in Afghanistan, by the way.
Sure, and I'll end with my spin on this in that it just makes me feel really grateful, Victor, that I'm sat here. We were talking about before we click record. I've just spent a ton of money on a bunch of stuff for the business, and I'm in a position where I'm really comfortable. I can reinvest this money into the business. Hopefully it grows it. It isn't just a waste of cash. And I'm sat here in my stupid rugby shirt. I'm just about to go and have a frigging kebab or something for tea and have a chill because my missus is going out to a restaurant. So it's going to be me and the dog eating a kebab probably. And I'm going to watch the film and just chill. And then there's people, not that far away. We're not talking about the other side of the universe. We're not talking about a different planet. There's people not that far away who are like, it's just shit, isn't it? It's so just crap.
Attitude of gratitude, man. Mm-hmm. Good way to end it, man.
Amazing stuff. Well, we'll wrap up with that. That was Victor Antonio, sales legend. My name is Will Barron, founder over at salesman.org. Hopefully the end of the show wasn't too deep and dark for a sales podcast. Leave us feedback over at thisweekinsales.com if you think it was. If it wasn't, everything that we talk about in this episode is available in the show notes over at thisweekinsales.com. And with that, we'll speak with you again next week.